My name is Commissioner Frank Avila. I'm a commissioner at the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago. And the name of our show today is These Streets Are Holy. And as my guest, I have John Ludwig. Hi, John. Glad to be on the show. And Jill, his wife. Jill.
Hello.
Thank you very much. And John and Jill are the founders of These Streets Are Holy. Now, what's a quick summary of These Streets Are Holy?
Well, we're a faith-based nonprofit that operates in underprivileged areas. And that's our essential message, these streets are holy. And we come in and we partner with people who are already in those areas to try to move that cause forward.
Interesting. Jill, was it your idea or John's idea, or was it both had the idea?
Well, actually, John could probably speak to that, but we were both called to try and make a change. God had really been influencing us each individually, and when the organization itself, the nonprofit, really started with a song that John wrote. Maybe you can talk a little more about
song? Oh, John's a singer, a musician?
Yes, I do play and write songs, play various instruments, and so I felt called to write this song and to address this topic of violence in the streets that certainly is nationally known as far as Chicago, but the issue is a worldwide issue. So I started struggling, kind of working my way through this song. I've written 200-300 songs in my life.
Yeah.
And so this one, it was not easy to get going, but we eventually kind of had a song and found a singer whose name is Anita Lewis, who's the voice of the song. If you were to look up the recording, I got some really top flight musicians in the studio with me, and we did a live take to create the recording.
Interesting.
And at that point, we felt we had something kind of special. And so the song actually ended up in the first round of Grammy consideration for this year's Grammys in the gospel performance category.
Now, what's the name of the song?
Well, it's These Streets Are Holy.
Oh, These Streets Are Holy.
And one of the things that I guess we would say about our organization is we had to distill who we are a bit. And so we came up with the way we outreach into the communities is through music, mentoring, and urban gardening.
Music, mentoring, urban gardening. That's before the show we were talking about the STEM program, STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, STEM. Now they added A to it, and now instead of STEM, it's STEAM. Science, technology, engineering, art, and math. Because
it's nice that it's back in.
It's back in because we have to have music.
Yeah, and
arts.
It never should have been out
arts.
of there either, right?
Yes. So I'm glad that art brought you into what you're doing, because we have to bring art. And you also mentioned about God. We have to bring God in the picture also.
Yeah, we'll talk a little more about how we really got started on some of that. But like one of the things we like to do with the music, and as we're a new organization, we're kind of moving forward with a lot of things. But we want to be able to go into some of these areas and give people a voice, so that they can create songs, have different versions of our songs that represents each person's viewpoint. And
interesting.
They really want to be heard. And many of the stories are the same, but it doesn't matter. It's individual to them and how they're impacted by violence and how it makes them feel, who they've lost. It's not right that they're just numbers.
Yes.
Right? We need to remember the names and honor the names. And this is one way of getting that to happen, is by getting some recordings done, maybe getting them on our Facebook page, and having people get a little more notice.
Yeah, well, music is good. I come from a music background. My father played string bass. I played piano and trombone. My brothers played guitar, and they had a group play mostly Latin and jazz.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you could come onto our Latin version. That'd be great.
Yeah. So you started with music, right?
We did.
And you also mentioned
Mentoring?
Mentoring. So how does mentoring come in now?
Well, mentoring is actually in everything that we do, from the beginning phone call of trying to find people who need some help to linking people together and networking. We might know someone who does a certain aspect, and we can connect them with other people who we may or may not gel very well. But it's a large, small community, let's say, where it's amazing how, it's 1 degree of separation a lot of times.
Yes.
And with everything that we do, even when it comes to building a garden box, well, what tools do you use? Does it have to be level? What's used for a hammer? When do you use a screw? How do you paint one of these items? There's a lot of things to learn, and even when it comes to the music, there's production, there's writing, there's collaborating, there's getting in the studio, and all these items are knowledge-based, educational. And the thing that's important about that is people can see that they may have a skill that they didn't know they had, and there's something else they can do than just being outside or not being able to be outside in these urban areas.
Yeah.
So.
And then I like what you said, large, small. One step away from being large or one step away from being small.
Right.
That's the key. So you got music, you got mentoring. Now, what other steps do you have then?
Urban gardening's our third category that we focus on. And I guess one other aspect of kind of finishing up mentoring is we consider all our efforts to be very relational. And so we're trying to connect people, one-on-one, and that's really how if you want to say, our ministry is our message ultimately, that these streets are holy. That we need to approach it from that viewpoint, that these aren't streets where people are killed and bad things happen. These are God's streets, the Lord's streets, and they're holy. And start to change that equation. And so the sense of relationships in everything we do, and many of those relationships, one leads to the next, which is how, like, our garden project we're currently working on happened. Someone we had met at a Wear Orange event last year, which is in memory of Hadia Pendleton, who was a very well-known victim of gun violence here in Chicago.
She had sung at President Obama's one of those events, and a week or so later was killed through gang violence.
How old was she?
She was 15, I believe.
15?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I remember that. And she sang at Obama's inauguration.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, in fact, her name is the first word in the These Streets Are Holy song. Hadia laughed with friends on the last day of her life. And that song, by the way, starts with that problem, that sense of things we need to change. But then by the end of the song, we turn it into hope. We have a kids choir that's singing with us, which is also one of these connections we made with someone who's had a after-school program for kids for 23 years now. And Jill accidentally
there's a lot of providence in all this whole nonprofit, a lot of providence where, one mistake, like I went to my job early and we didn't have a session that day, but I heard the choir singing. They were getting ready for their Christmas program that day. They let me sit in and listen, and those are who we used. And, so now we have a relationship with that choir director, who also has an after-school program, who we know others who have after-school programs. So there's a lot of this linking together, and ways that we can hope to help them and bring arts or these other items to kind of teach, and as well as get people together who are doing the same things, maybe even 10 minutes from each other, and they don't even know each other.
You're, and These Streets Are Holy. How did you say that name, These Streets Are Holy?
Well, we actually have a couple Spanish translations. we ourselves we acronize them to TSAH when we're talking among ourselves.
Because the streets are holy.
They are. They're not meant for violence. That's how we see it. They're holy. This is your home.
Yes.
Right? It's right outside your front door. And the things that are happening on their streets are impacting things that are going on in your home. You can't go by your windows. If you go by your window, you could get in trouble by your parent. People just drive by intermittently and will shoot, not necessarily because there's another rival gang there. It's So if there's a paradigm shift from streets of violence to streets that are holy, maybe that can make a difference in the violence that's out there.
Yes. And so, and that's why you started These Streets Are Holy, because of everything that's going on. You wrote the music there. I mean, excellent, excellent.
And Jill maybe can give her backstory of kind of how we came to this point in life, and then I'll feed back in on mine. But if you want to talk about your previous life.
I was in corporate IT for about 20 years.
Corporate IT?
Mm-hmm. Oh. And so for a couple of years, God was telling me, Jill, you need to do something different. You need to do something different. But I didn't know what it was. I was getting really frustrated. So left corporate IT to work with marketing a musical that John wrote called One Night in Bethlehem, which was also Grammy considered, appreciatedly. And so from there, at that same time, we were starting the These Streets Are Holy campaign. We opened a Facebook page and got 10,000 likes a month.
10,000 likes a month?
For like the first year, it was crazy how much it was happening.
My God.
And that's when we felt like, okay, this is bigger than us. You know, this is
on Facebook.
On Facebook. So we have over 150,000 likes right now. And the majority of those happen to be in Africa and Asia. So we need to get a little more here, but it's worldwide problem and issue, and people recognize with it.
Interesting. I mean, that's a lot of hit.
And as for me, you know, like I say, I had always kind of had this up and down sense of, you know, this violence. Some of those cases, like a Hadia Pendleton case, you know, those things bothered you, but what do you do about it? And I had this sense, well, I should be writing a song, but I didn't know what it would be, and so I remember there was a night I went to bed kind of troubled, and kind of woke up in the middle of the night, and I was getting a very clear message that he was telling me, you know, these are my streets and they're holy, and you need to tell people to turn back to me if they want to solve these problems. That you can throw a lot of solutions at them, but until you get straight this way is not going to work so well. And I said, okay, I will bring that message forth. And I said, I'm not sure I'm the most logical candidate somehow. I mean, here I'm sort of an older guy in the south suburbs. You know, I don't feel like I'm not in the middle of the problem. Why are people going to listen to me? But then it's like, well, you know, the entire Bible's pretty much full of people who weren't the expected ones who were asked to do things. So it's like, okay. And what we actually have found is that very thing, the fact that we are from somewhere outside of this troubled, these troubled areas, really counts to people there. They're like, you're coming up here to work with us.
You care.
You care, and our own community is not really helping what's going on. So also going up there shows people in our area on the south suburbs and the surrounding Chicago suburbs that, you know, there are things you can do and ways to get involved.
And, you know, Jill, you came from corporate IT. John, as I mentioned, I'm the commissioner at the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago. John works at the Water Reclamation District. John is
I am a senior process control engineer is my title.
Chemical engineering.
Yes, that's my degree. And so, well, actually, one of the things that maybe we'll circle back to your question about how urban gardening is going with us, but the district's been very gracious and provided us with a couple truckloads of this compost blend. That's the small version of it. When the truck comes, there's a lot of wheelbarrow loads to move. So we're real happy for volunteers in those days. But that's what we've been putting in the raised beds at the garden site. We now have built 7 more beds to the 4 that were there, so there are 11 that are growing various, you know, vegetables and flowers and things like that are in there.
And you know, and this garden, this urban gardening is that your project. This is the first project that you're doing, right?
It is
the first project, and you had to get supplies and compost, as you mentioned, and volunteers, right? How did you get the volunteers?
You have to think about it even bigger than that, though. So if we're going to be there for a big majority of the day, do I need to get a toilet delivered? Or do we need a permit to be on the
sure,
property to work?
Water?
Water was a definite issue. This property did not have water initially. So you learn a lot on how we can get those things to happen.
One of the things we did that the district would be very supportive of is we installed a rain barrel. So we now have, given the spring rains, a good 55 gallons.
Yeah.
If we had probably 10 rain barrels, would have 10 times that amount.
What
But,
they used to do also is, prior to getting that rain barrel, is Deborah Dean, who's the one who's the nonprofit, she would take home like laundry containers and things like that, and just fill them at home and bring them back to the property to water the few things that were there, and that was a lot of work.
Oh, a lot of containers.
A lot of containers.
A lot of containers.
Yeah.
And so how did you, did you buy this lot? Did someone give you the lot? Or how did you acquire the lot to start your first urban gardening?
So this lot was donated by the city to Deborah Dean in honor of her daughter Siobhan L. Dean, who was murdered 25 years ago.
Oh my God.
And so she's had that property for a long time, and it's all related to what they got from the city. Now, we met Deborah kind of through some other channels, through Moms Demand Action. They told us about her, and so we contacted her, and we've been working with her since last fall, I would say, is when this started.
Yeah, the first thing we were able to do, we knew we wouldn't get real far last year, but we thought maybe we can make a bit of a statement in the neighborhood, and we went in and planted sunflower seeds.
I see.
Probably planted 200 of them, and this was kind of late in the year, but they all grew, and I mean the stalks were like 2.5 inch diameter, and everyone walking by knew something was going on at this place now. So that was the start last fall, and then this year we really been hitting it hard.
And then we do have some photos before and after.
Well, before and continuing, let's call it that.
Before and continuing?
Because
After.
we have
Okay.
several.
Now, what's up on the screen now?
Yeah.
That is the before
Before?
picture,
Okay,
which
before.
has 4 garden beds and then that path, and that's it.
And that's it.
right.
That's before.
That's the before.
Right, and
So you
Deborah's
can-
intention, if you were to see that before picture again, was the back part was for growing things.
Growing
The front part was her Serenity Memorial Garden part, where you could go and kind of reflect and have a peaceful time.
I see. And up on the screen now is
That's our continuing
continuing.
picture. So you can't see very well in the back,
Sure.
but there are 11 garden beds back there
11
right now.
garden- and-
and they're all filled with that wonderful.
And the garden. Who made the garden bed? Now you mentioned
Well,
you
yeah,
teaching.
I actually had a
Yes.
couple designs I came up with, one of which related to some donated lumber we got, so I had to kind of think my way through how to put that together. And so that's some 4x8 ones. And then I also had looked up and had some ideas about how to do things with a corrugated metal. So some of them are 3x3 designed with corrugated metal in them.
And the box, you're teaching them how to become a carpenter. Whoever
Right.
wants to volunteer or learn to be a carpenter could join your These Streets Are Holy.
Right.
And this is where the mentoring start coming in.
Right,
Yeah.
before the mentoring is in a lot of areas. So we can teach them skills towards carpeting, but we're not a full-fledged carpentry
Sure. I understand.
class. Yes. So in a lot of these things that they can learn that. So not only that, but how do you even get the wheelbarrow up to dump that dirt? Or, how do you dig a hole to plant a bush as opposed to how do you dig a hole to plant a little, marigold?
Yes.
So there are a lot of different things that they just haven't had the opportunity to do. And I mean by people in these urban areas.
Interesting there. And then so this is your first one. Are you working on your second one once this is done, or because there's a lot of vacant land on that south side?
Yeah, well, you very graciously introduced us to people from the Urban Gardening Initiative.
Yes.
Just last week, so there's some really strong connection possibilities there. We do have a pastor in Gary who's doing some urban garden, community garden things in his area.
Yes.
Gary's certainly a very distressed area if
Yes.
you've been out there. So yeah, we have things in progress. Certainly for us, we can only extend ourselves so far organizationally at this point.
And that's a smart way because you just started.
Right.
You have so many volunteers you use, and you can't overload yourself because you'll never get anything accomplished. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you're thinking like that also. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things at the end of the day you realize, I don't think I have much left, so yeah, we definitely recognize our limits at this point, and we obviously want to grow, but
Yeah.
we need people to come alongside with us to accomplish that.
And what type of people do you need?
Well,
in the community, churches, or
well, for instance, just for our nonprofit itself, we could use someone in IT.
IT?
Right, help work with our website,
Yeah, social media.
social media,
Finance,
finance,
fundraising.
Yeah.
fundraising,
Yes.
yeah. There are a lot of, we're doing this on our own.
Sure.
And our other thing too is we have to be better at asking for
Better
help.
at asking, yes.
Yeah, because we're used to getting in there and
Yeah.
doing it,
Sure.
and it's if we
Yeah.
want to do larger things that make more of an impact, it's bigger than us.
Yeah, because when I was out there, you had about 8 to 10 volunteers.
Right.
Yes,
You had 8 to 10 volunteers of different ages.
yes.
It was a very interesting
Yeah.
group, that
Yes,
first
yeah,
one, because
yeah.
we had one guy was through Chicagoland Prison Outreach who
Yeah.
had been previously incarcerated.
Yeah.
Incarcerated,
And they have a welding and carpentry program that guys can go through.
Interesting.
So he was able to come. We
Yeah.
had a couple people from a church plant
Yeah.
that's down in our area in
Yeah.
Chicago Heights.
Yeah.
A father and son came.
Oh, that's good.
And so we had two people from our church were there.
Yes.
And so it was just a good group. And
Yeah.
then one of our other things, I'm fairly good at cooking, I guess. So I made a nice lunch, and so you always make more than you need. So people in the neighborhood were coming by, and so that's part of how we kind of get to know people. It's
And
like,
there's that one-on-one
Yes.
relationship where you can kind of build trust. They don't necessarily need to work on the project, but please come and see what we're doing. Let us give you a meal.
Yeah.
I mean, we had some coming and say, "Can I take some of this home to my granddaughter?" Sure. We don't want to bring any of it
That's
home.
good, yeah.
And then another day that we were there, we had someone walk by. We were just unloading our van. We had someone walk by and says, "Hey, what are you doing?" And we
Yeah.
said, "We're doing this." He says, "Well, I don't have the right shoes on, but I'm going to go get them and I'll be back." And so he came and helped us, and someone else was riding on a bike. "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
"Oh, well, let me help." So the community really does want to get
Sure.
involved and wants to see a change.
And that's because they want to get involved because they want to upgrade their community. And also they could learn on what you're doing also. And they care.
They do.
Well, my statement is that gardening was the first job assigned to humanity, and so in some sense it's all intuitive
Yeah.
to us. That I think people connect to the earth, and
Sure.
I even though I took a shower this morning, I think there's still dirt under my fingernails today.
So this gardening that you are doing right now, it's just for plants. You're planting plants. Do you vision of vegetables on your other projects? So,
Well, we can't speak to what each project would have,
Yeah.
but one thing that's important to think about is that many of these areas that could use a garden are in food deserts.
food desert, yes.
Right. So in this particular garden, half of that property is meant for growing fruits and vegetables.
Oh, excellent.
And the other half is for the memorial
Yes.
serenity aspect
Yeah.
where people can come and reflect.
Yes.
So, I think the vegetable and that is very important in what we'll be doing going forward.
Yes. And also your first garden is across from a school.
Yes, a
If-
grade school.
If it'd be nice if the principal of the school, what's the name of the school?
Leviso.
Leviso. If the principal, summer's coming, so school's coming to an end.
Yeah.
But in September, maybe working with the principal on projects that the first graders have or second graders, if they go to the 8th grade, will come across the street
That's a goal.
and do a science project.
Yes, they
Yeah.
have a small little garden in the back, but
Oh.
gee, across the street we have a really big garden.
Yeah, and
So-
they could come across and explain to the kids how to take care of a garden, the importance of a garden, they got a lot of questions of climate change, CO2, where your garden will take in the CO2, absorb the CO2, and
Right.
that'd be a class, you know, an experiment that the kids could do.
Right, and all they have to do is walk across the street.
Yes, yeah.
So-
John, so that maybe
Yeah.
that'd be the goal. Maybe we'll
That's
Yeah.
the goal.
We'll call the principal.
Right, well, I think it's on our
It's
to-do
on our list, it's on our list, yeah. Yeah,
We have a really long to-do list.
Yeah,
we
well,
getting there.
well, you know, this is very important that, as John mentioned in the book of Genesis, God put who? Man on the earth to take care of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
So, and what's the best way of taking care of the earth is showing how to do gardening,
Mm-hmm.
taking care of the this soil.
Yeah, and I guess I was very young. I think I was in 7th grade, the first Earth Day, and that actually made a big impression on me. And I think that's probably what led me to be a chemical engineer, because I
Yeah.
wanted to work in environmental issues. And that sense of stewardship that comes along with that. So, you know, that's a sense that I don't know you get that until someone teaches that to you. You know, we live in a very disposable society. You know, you throw away the plastic straw, the plastic fork, the styrofoam plate, you know, all that stuff. And there's now, I think, a long overdue awakening on some of the issues with that isn't good stewardship necessarily in a lot of those areas,
Well,
be it
that's- yeah.
pesticides or, you know, things that affect people's health. And we're certainly seeing these microplastics are literally everywhere on our earth that we look.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. Your garden are all organic gardening, no pesticides on the gardening,
Right.
no synthetic herbicides on the garden there, and that be another in the lesson to teach the kids too,
oh my, yes.
how to do an organic gardening and how to not use a weed killer, because it doesn't
Right.
kill the weeds because it comes back next year.
Yeah.
That's true,
Yeah.
that's true, yes.
So yeah, you know, there's a lot of classroom opportunities just in your garden
Right.
that the school across the street could start having. I could see what the location of your lot across the school, they could have a lot of environmental classes for the kids
Right.
to do. There,
So hopefully they'll be willing to work with Deborah,
yeah.
and we can continue to support this project that she has. And this is a long-running project for us.
Sure.
We're not going to just drop the ball and say, here, we're done.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah, because true, the biggest thing that I see in when a project is completed is maintenance, and the goal here is to get other groups involved in the neighborhood to maintain an urban garden. And in our society, like we're with the Water Reclamation District, and we fund a lot of green projects. So the next step is how to maintain that project.
Right.
Okay.